Well, welcome. Hi, this is Michael Makovsky, and the President and CEO at JINSA for another edition of Snapshot. I'm joined, as usual, by my distinguished colleague, John Hanna, the Randi and Charles Wax Senior Fellow here at JINSA. John, great to see you as always.
Great to see you, Mike. I'm coming to you live from the Ritz Hotel in Herzliya.
All right, great. Well, we look forward to hearing about your trip, and it sounds like you're going to have a great trip this week there. Today, actually, I should note, is the saddest day of the Jewish calendar. It's Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, when we commemorate the destruction of the two Jewish temples and really the destruction of two Jewish commonwealths in the Holy Land. The rabbis say that at least one of the destructions was due to sinat chinam, basically sort of a blind hatred amongst the Jewish people. And I wouldn't say we have that today, although there's certainly elements of that in Israel, but it's certainly a society that is riven over a number of issues, one of which is Gaza, which is what we want to talk about today. In fact, it might not even be evenly divided. I believe the polls, John, suggest something like 70% of the country, at least I think that was a poll I saw recently, want to do a full deal, get the hostages out, all of them out, end the war for now. I think it's but the government is persisting on. Obviously, there have been a lot of accusations internationally of intentional starvation in Gaza by Israel of the Palestinians. I think that's certainly a questionable charge, to say the least. But one thing is for sure, there is an intentional starvation by Hamas, it seems like, of these remaining hostages. We saw this really extremely upsetting picture and video of one of the hostages, Evyatar David, who's just bones with a little flesh on him, digging what presumably is his grave, would be his grave. It's obviously Hamas releases these videos periodically to raise the pressure. And it seems like we thought there was reports of maybe a deal, and then certainly this international criticism of Israel has certainly emboldened Hamas to hold out for more. You seem to have what we've seen for a long time now. You have Israel saying they don't really want to end the war fully, but they want to get as many hostages out as possible. And Hamas says they won't allow the hostages out. And there's about 20 reported that are alive out of about 50 altogether. So they don't want to release any of them unless Israel says they'll end the war. And they certainly won't agree to disarm and remove themselves from what power that they have in the areas that they control. So, John, how do you see this? I mean, how do you see what Israel is trying to accomplish? Do you think it makes sense? Is it a winning strategy?
Well, it's hard to say it's a winning strategy, yeah. Mike. The military campaign goes on since the last ceasefire ended back in March and Israel resumed its offensive. I think they've lost something close to 50 soldiers. And we're obviously, we've gotten one Israeli-American hostage out through a separate negotiation between the United States and Hamas, but we haven't gotten anybody else out since March. And now we've got this hunger, food insecurity issue in Gaza that's gotten more extreme. And I think people, after a lot of crying wolf for the last 20 months, frankly, that we were on the verge of famine, now it does seem like there's something serious going on. Some people are dying from lack of food, and you've had this fierce international backlash against Israel, putting Israel under enormous strain and stress and isolation. Even President Trump at one point said, yes, he thinks it's clear to him from the pictures that there's starvation going on and we need to do something about it. There's a new urgency. Obviously, everybody knows we could end this war if Hamas just gave up and delivered the hostages, but everybody knows they're not going to do that. This is part of their strategy to maximize the suffering of innocent Palestinians, maximizing whatever famine or starvation is occurring in order to place pressure on Israel to end this war. So Israel's in a difficult position. President Trump sent Steve Witkoff to the region last week in the middle of this crisis to talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu, to go to Gaza itself and see the humanitarian operations underway there, hopefully to come back and have some new ideas. The one thing that we are hearing is that there could be a change in the negotiating strategy about a ceasefire to now give up any effort, which we've been engaged in for most of the last 4 or 5 months, to get a partial ceasefire, a 60-day ceasefire, in order to go for a comprehensive deal that delivers all at once all of the hostages, somehow will result in disarming Hamas and in ending the war in some form. Steve Witkoff apparently has talked about this with the hostage families. He says partial deals are out. They don't work. Now we got to go for a comprehensive deal. And he suggests that, some of the Arab states are prepared, if that's the way we go, to take some responsibility here. So
let me ask you, John, I'll interrupt on that. How does that, by the way, let me just add, I have found these charges of intentional starvation by the Israelis to be repugnant. And obviously that New York Times picture of that baby that they used to try to highlight, the starvation of the baby. But it turns out the baby had, I think, cerebral palsy, and was known for that. And they made a correction, but they tried to claim it was due to starvation, the way the baby looked. But the correction obviously didn't have the same currency as that picture. And you see this picture. There's a picture of the Hamas feeding this hostage, and as has been noted, the hostage is obviously completely emaciated, but the arm that's feeding him, or that's reaching out, looks pretty vigorous and robust, not starving whatsoever. So it seems like Hamas at least has the food. But if it has taken this long to try to get a partial deal, we understand the negative of partial deals. Hostage families don't want it. They want everybody out. They don't want there to be any selection. The fear is you do a partial deal, you won't have any more deals. And you could understand that. But if it takes this long to do a partial deal, how do you get a comprehensive deal soon before you worry that more hostages could just die of starvation?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Unless obviously this is on Hamas's terms. Hamas wants a comprehensive. They say they want a comprehensive deal. We'll see if they really mean it, in which they give back all the hostages and Israel agrees to end the war, which the Israeli government hasn't been willing to do because it thinks, that it absolutely has to eliminate this extremist terrorist group the group that started this multi-front war back on October 7th, 2023, committed, these awful massacres and atrocities against Israel, the worst in the country's history. That group, in order for Israeli deterrence to be able to hold, that group needs to be eradicated. It cannot anymore be in power, have a functioning military, any kind of governance, and its leadership has to be sent to the four corners of the world and essentially surrender.
And if you don't get them now, they'll just strengthen themselves, and Israel is going to then have to go back in, whether in a year or whenever.
Right. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's the Middle East. Hezbollah is going to strengthen itself. Iran is going to strengthen itself. Hamas is going to strengthen themselves. They'll certainly do that if you make all the mistakes you made before October 7th and don't do the kind of active, aggressive counterterrorism kind of work that you need to do, the way Israel is now doing it
And
against
protect your
Hezbollah,
borders. And protect your
against
borders.
Hezbollah in Lebanon, and protect your borders, and do these sorts of serious things that obviously collapsed and failed on October 7th. So yes, there's obviously a risk in ending this war, but we know that there's also a tremendous price, and it looks to me, frankly, like a rising price that Israel is paying, not only obviously in this international backlash and isolation, but in the loss of soldiers, the wear and tear on the IDF, increasing number of suicide amongst IDF soldiers. And what you mentioned, just this strain and stress and division within Israeli society is severe. People are tired, they're worn out, they want those hostages back. So, whether or not the United States and Israel, together with our Arab friends, can come up with a deal that provides Israel with a little bit of respite from this war, gets back all of the hostages, has the Arabs assuming responsibility for a political, diplomatic strategy to put in place a non-Hamas governance, and then over time, force Hamas into disarming and disbanding itself. We'll see, but the part of the deal has obviously got to be that Israel is sitting on that perimeter, and if it sees any effort to reconstitute the agreement between certainly the United States and Israel, and maybe with those Arab states as well that might assume some responsibility for Gaza, that the IDF at the end of the day is going to defend Israel and do whatever is necessary to make sure that Hamas will not be able to reconstitute anything that approaches the kind of threat it posed, almost 2 years ago.
By the way, aside from the international criticism and, that's pushing countries like France and the UK and Canada say that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state, which would be an awful thing for them to do. It'd be a complete reward to terrorism of October 7th, I think. It is disappointing. I mean, there's certainly the Gaza war gives an extra reason. Maybe they don't need it, but, it was disappointing last week to see 60% of Senate Democrats support the Bernie Sanders legislation to block certain weapons to Israel. I think it was 27 out of the 47, but then even the centrist senator from Michigan, Slotkin, is Jewish, said she would have voted on it if she was in the chamber. So you have 28 out of 47 senators.
Yeah,
there's a lot of maybe Gaza is just another excuse for them, given the dynamics, unfortunately, going on in the Democratic Party.
There's a lot of worrying signs. It's not just in the Democratic Party too. It's amongst a very lot of loud, influential people on the Republican side as well. I don't think we see it in Republican polling, other than amongst some real softening and support for Israel amongst young Republicans, but the loudest, most vocal people in the party, from Steve Bannon to Tucker Carlson, obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene. I do think we've got to be worried and seeing these as some kind of early warning sign. And to the extent that that Israel decides that, it may be time to figure out a way to de-escalate and bring this war to at least a temporary conclusion, and get those hostages back, that it could make some sense and take some of the wind out of what right now is a worrisome trend.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. Look, Trump also, as you noted, cited the starvation, although it seems like Witkoff hasn't expressed any daylight from Israel on their negotiating stance with Hamas. But certainly Israel needs to make sure that President Trump stays in the corner on Gaza. That's obviously the most important thing for them right now. Well, look, obviously this is something that I'm sure we're going to be talking about in future episodes. We hope this could be resolved soon, and they could get these hostages out, and also that there could be an arrangement that would facilitate Israel from reducing their military activity in Gaza.
And I do think, Mike, after seeing those pictures of those two young hostages that Hamas put out, I just hope the world comes down like a ton of bricks,
Right.
at least expressing its alarm, its demand that the Red Cross or some humanitarian organizations get in there to actually take care of those people and at a minimum keep them alive and get them fed and get them whatever care they need, because it's just outrageous. And for anybody in the world to stay silent about that while they're raving about Israel and making all kinds of false charges about Israel. This is something as you said, this is real starvation. And let's hope.
And that means, I think, pressuring Qatar and other supporters of Hamas to really do it. There certainly is a focus on the Gaza population, less on the hostages. I'll just note on a personal thing, I think, what was it, a year ago, there was a big focus on spread of disease in Gaza. I can't remember if it was it TB or was it, I can't remember now, measles. And there's a whole focus how, there has to be Israel has to allow in the medicines to do it. I remember a New York Times correspondent reached out to me for a quote on this. And I said, sure, you definitely need to let these medicines in. You don't want to have a spread of disease among children in Gaza, but as long as they could ensure that the medicines go to
the hostages.
The Bibas, and the Bibas children who we didn't know if they were
That's right.
alive then or not. And the New York Times quoted me saying about letting the medicines go into Gaza, but omitted the part about making sure that the medicines were going to the Bibas children, the Israeli hostage children that turned out they were dead, but we didn't know that yet, of course, at that time. But this is such as the slant of international opinion and a lot of the mainstream media on this issue. But you're right, there has to be a tremendous amount of pressure on the Red Cross. And I think, man, the supporters of Hamas, like Qatar, and so on. So let's, John, I wish you a good trip to Israel. I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I look forward to speaking to you all in the next episode of Snapshot.
Great, Mike. Take care.
Have a good week, everybody.